We've turned the calendar. September is here, which means school is back. And so are we. Welcome back to Maple Grove Voices Inside the Huddle, presented by Twin Cities Orthopedics. Inside this episode, we're talking Maple Grove Volleyball with head coach Sean Haugen. The Crimson 2-0 on the season with wins over Delano and St. Michael Albertville. We had a great conversation with Coach Haugen. We've got that for you straight ahead. But first, what a scene on Thursday night. High school football kicked off at Crimson Stadium. Maple Grove and Osseo opening up the season. It was the Crimson coming away with a 28-7 victory. Maple Grove defensively, they lived up to the hype, as head coach Matt Lombardi talked about earlier on in the preseason. Held Osseo off the scoreboard until late in the game. Offensively, Crimson relied on a pair of running backs to propel them to the victory. Quarterback Curtis Haugen made his first varsity start, and according to head coach Matt Lombardi, played extremely well.
Oh, Curtis is great. I think he's just a hard-nosed, tough kid that I think he's kind of a winner. I think he's someone that's a great defensive player that, like I said, we're using him on offense just to take that thing. But he's going to be someone down the road that's going to have to do both for us and be a big part on both sides, because he just has such great attitude, and he's my kind of guy. He's a tough guy, and I think he's got that attitude that I think is good for us.
Maple Grove will host Prior Lake next week in a top 10 showdown, and Osseo will open their home season against White Bear Lake. On the other side of this break, we're chatting with Maple Grove head volleyball coach Sean Haugen. This is Maple Grove Voices Inside the Huddle, presented by Twin Cities Orthopedics.
It takes a lot to bring down a Minnesota Vikings player, but when an injury occurs, a Twin Cities Orthopedics physician is on the field and ready to assess the situation. TCO is the official sports medicine provider of the Minnesota Vikings and proud to be a part of the new home of the Minnesota Vikings in Eagan. Best yet, the community can see the same great doctors at one of our 40 clinic locations across the metro. Visit TCOMN.com to learn more. TCOMN.com.
Welcome back. It is Maple Grove Voices Inside the Huddle, and we're talking Crimson Volleyball. Caught up with head coach Sean Haugen after tryouts and started our conversation with how the first week went.
Really well. Good number of kids. I think we maxed out about 65 kids this year, so obviously we can't keep everybody, but very excited for what's going to be going on this year, from our freshmen all the way up to our varsity with what we've got coming in. We have a lot of kids that are playing club season. So rest is the big thing. I kind of talked to him about, time off and everything, and I even kind of used myself as an example. I said, there's 52 weeks in a year. I had 3 weeks off in the last year from not having to do anything. So that's the big one with rest. I usually tell a lot of the returning varsity players that, when it's open gyms and captains, I don't want to see you sometimes until then. Heal your body, but very happy. First practice is today. Everybody's kind of going and figuring each other out and getting used to each other. We have our first scrimmage on Saturday. But excited, top to bottom, with what the program will probably do this year.
It turns pretty quick. You go through those first 3 days and you kind of get your team. And walk me through that process, because you get a chance in that short amount of time, but it's a lot of time to watch kids go through a lot of drills.
It really is this, we kind of split ourselves up after the first day, like in the afternoon, where we take a lot of the 7th, 8th graders and freshmen and kind of put them in another gym. And then it's the rest of myself and the rest of the staff for the B Squad JV, where we can look at our kids. So we figure we have about 12 hours to really nail down out of 65 kids on who's going to represent the program this year. So it's time consuming, it's hard, it's a lot of extra time after we're done with the staff talking about who's going to be where and whatnot, and making all the decisions. But in the end, we feel we've got a fabulous group of kids here this year.
Let's talk about that. Who do we want? Who do we need to look for? I mean, I know, Paige Hinsey. I know that both Hinseys and I there are others too. What is going to be the strength of your squad this year?
I always talk about for us to be successful, we have to be able to pass, block, and play defense. And I was talking to the kids yesterday about, we've been solid in certain aspects of the game, but this will be the first year in quite some time where we're going to be very solid on the pins. We'll have Paige Hinsey, Allie Hinsey. We have a freshman named Skylar Gray, who's now in the play, who was in the last year, came in as 2 years ago as a 7th grader, and made it up to JV by the time it was the end of the year. So that's another name. We have a lot of returning kids. We have another freshman named Megan Liu, who will be a setter, which we're going to have in conjunction with Zoe Brown, our other setter, kind of running 6'2s probably in the beginning. And then just kind of the core we have for the main group that's returning from last year. Lexi Preed will obviously be another kid that'll shine on the right side. Megan Pater on the right side as well, in some middle, and then Maddie Black and Anna Capilla in the middle. But our passing with Allie, Paige, and Skylar is, again, it should be very solid. And then we have another DS, Hallie Fugelstedt, is a junior that we brought up as well. That should do really well. So looking for a lot of good things from the kids this year.
How much fun is it from a coaching perspective to watch the progression throughout the years? You talked about the 7th grader that, by the time her 7th grade season, I mean, she's not even 13 years old yet, and she's playing JV, and now 2 years later is going to be a major part of what you guys are going to do.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to watch the development. I've been coaching juniors in high school here in Minnesota for over 20 years, and you think that there's moments where you've seen a lot of the things with kids and how they play and their development, and then somebody always comes out. I remember back when the Baumans started playing here at Osseo High School, Jen and Kelly, and they were the standard. Then you had all the Pinatas at Armstrong, Marcy and all of her sisters, and now it's just in recent years, we've had Sydney Hilly, one of the best players in the States, and Samantha Seliger Swenson, who's now sitting for the Gophers. I mean, it goes on and on and on with great players, but when you get those players in your own program, it's fun to see from where they come in as a 7th grader to where they're going to be hopefully by the time they're a senior and graduating. I mean, my oldest daughter this year is a 7th grader who's in here now. So it's going to be fun to watch her play. I mean, she's been playing volleyball at Select and now here. She started Select when she was in 8th grade, when she was 8 years old. So to watch her develop over the last few years has been pretty cool.
It's kind of fun, too, to take the coach hat off, put the dad hat on, too, right?
It is sometimes, yeah. It's kind of new to me sometimes. Right. Like last year was kind of like the first official time I was actually able to really watch her play, because I was always coaching juniors at a different club. Sure. She was at this club up here, so now this year I'm at the same one where she's at, so it was kind of cool to actually be a parent sometimes.
What you talked a little bit about what to expect from an expectation perspective. It's always kind of a dangerous thing to do. Lombo talked about the other night about the most no coach ever after day one looks at their team and says, "I love what I have." What are some things though that you like after tryouts? Now that you know kind of what you have, what are some things that you really like as a coach about your group?
I think the one big thing and we talked about this today, kind of in great length today, was, you take away all the skills and everything that each kid brings, and the bottom line is that we have great kids, and most all programs have that. I mean, but I think in the end, if we can be a single symbiotic cohesion group on the court every time we're playing, that's going to benefit us, and that's one of the big things I talk about. Gelling is the big one. I mean, you have to be able to play as one, and I always talk to them, I use another thing about, we're all cogs in a clock. And for the clock to work, all the cogs have to be working correctly and at the same time. We are kind of in that same place, and to be able to see them grow into those cogs and make everything work and work perfectly, because that's what we strive for, is just something that's great to see. You mentioned it off the top that really you've had 3 weeks in the last year to kind of take a step back. Is there, from a high school perspective, is there a time where you start to get that itch again? Or does it never really, because I know you guys have summer camps and you're doing all that stuff too, so you're really never ever away from the program. But is there a point where you kind of are like, all right, the juices are let's go? Yeah, it's kind of, I sometimes think it's like the very first time we walk in the gym for tryouts. So it kind of starts there, but then, I think today was the pivotal point to where it really is that point, because now we had our first 2 practices today, so now we're kind of getting in the gym and I can work with the kids and see what we really have, and we know what our goals are and what we want to shoot for, and now it's just we're out of the gate and it's time to run for the next 12 weeks and hopefully extend our season as far as we can into sections, and obviously everybody's goal is to make it to state.
And you talked about it too. I mean, it turns quick. I mean, you guys scrimmage Saturday and then you're going. I mean, it's interesting how it's like the whole build up, the whole lead up, all summer you're waiting for it to happen, then it happens, and then it's like this roller coaster on end. You're on the other end and you're heading down, and it just goes so fast.
It does. It's like it's 12 weeks, but it's so compacted because we're together 5 days a week, some weekends, and it's like you talk about, we have our first scrimmage on Saturday, we have another one on Tuesday, and 2 weeks from today, we're playing our second match already. And I have friends and colleagues that their first matches are going to be next Friday. And then you have that following Saturday, which I believe is the 26th, is this big side-out classic. We've played in the past. I just decided not to this year so I can have more non-conference section matches, which is a good thing for us. So with our schedule and everything, we're pretty stacked with teams that we're playing this year. Most of our tournaments are toward the end of the season. We'll do 2 weekends in a row. We'll be at the Hopkins tournament. Then we'll go to Lakeville North for 2 days. And then MEA, we're in Sartell for a tournament for all day.
2 more for you. You talked about goals. Kind of walk me through what those are.
Everybody kind of sets kind of the same things for what they want to do. We finish high in the conference, or if not win the conference, and then obviously make it to state. Those are kind of the top goals. But the one big one I've put on the girls this year is we need to be mentally tough. We struggled with some stuff last year as a group that really kind of at times was kind of our Achilles heel. So being mentally tough is the big one I really kind of put on the kids. But that's the goal, obviously, and then the other ones I kind of talked about with finishing well in the conference. That's the big one. We know some of the teams that are going to be out there this year that we're going to have to compete against in our conference, even though it's 2 conferences because we're so large.
Right.
But Champlin's going to be right up there again. I mean, with John coming back, it's great to see John back in the gym, and with some of the core kids he's going to have there with Izzy Aspern and Emma Schmidt and a few other ones that he's got. His libero, Weinstein. I won't even say her name because I'm probably going to butcher it anyways, but great libero.
Right.
And
Hi, Doug.
Hey, Paige.
And Brigor, so he's going to be solid. In our conference, we're one of the toughest conferences around.
Yeah.
And it's fun because half our section is our conference.
Right.
So we see everybody 2 or 3 times during the year, and then with the addition of some of the other schools they have this year, Wyzetta, because it's kind of switched a little bit. We lost Blaine. They went up. Celeste is now going to be up in the Cambridge-Sandy Conference, but it's still going to be one of the toughest conferences. Section 2 and in our section, Section 5, we're tough, but it's fun.
It absolutely. There's a challenge every single night, and it's something different to look at every single night. Last one for you. Finish the sentence. The Maple Grove Crimson Girls Volleyball team will be successful this year if
we can do all of the fundamentals proficiently and very well. That's the big one.
Thanks to head coach Sean Haugen. The Crimson return to action on Thursday, September 7th at Spring Lake Park. Thanks again to our sponsor, Twin Cities Orthopedics. We'll catch you next time on Maple Grove Voices Inside the Huddle.